to the next episode of the Radio Data Podcast. Today, our guest is Ola Sars, who lives in Stockholm in Sweden. Ola is a successful music tech entrepreneur, and he's the founder, CEO, and chairman of Soundtrack Your Brand. Ola, it's my pleasure to have you in my show.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, we will be talking about data and AI, and I'm really happy to hear your perspective on such topics as a CEO of a fast-growing company. However, as always, let's start with the introduction. So could you please tell us more about yourself and your company?
Sure. I'm a serial entrepreneur within music tech and audio tech. So this is my fifth startup within the space. The last almost 15 years now, I've been doing the same thing, more or less, building companies within the audio and music streaming markets. Soundtrack Your Brand is nothing more complicated than a business grade service for music streaming. So basically, we're the world's first music streaming platform for usage of music in your business. So if you're running a cafe, a restaurant, or a retail, big or small, global or local, around 95% of businesses use music to improve the customer experience when people walk into their businesses. And we're the first kind of really intelligent music streaming platform to help them play the right music at the right place at the right time to provide that customer experience.
So what is the value that your product gives to the businesses that you have mentioned?
We give them a sophisticated, basically B2B SaaS software stack for managing music into a very complex use case, where if you're running, for example, 10 juice bars or 100 juice bars or 1,000 juice bars worldwide, you have this sophisticated requirement of being able to play the right music in Stockholm today. That music might be different in Munich or in New York, but it needs to be on brand. It needs to be the right tempo depending on what day and what hour and what type of experience you're trying to deliver. You need to avoid playing maybe explicit lyrics or music that's offensive for your customers. You need to be fully licensed for usage of music in the commercial domain, which obviously our consumer services like Apple, Amazon, Spotify are not. So we are solving this pain point of a simple, frictionless delivery platform for music in business, saving the business owner or the music manager at a bigger business time, anxiety, and money.
So let's assume that I have a restaurant and I will start using Soundtrack Your Brand. And what can I expect from your product in terms of, for example, customer satisfaction or my own revenue or maybe something else?
Yeah, so very kind of different levels of sophistication depending on the buyer. If you take it all the way to what research stipulates, and we do a lot of research both with in the field and together with academics, but as one big field experiment that we did that kind of underlines the whole thing about music in business is we helped one of the world's biggest fast food chains increase sales by 9%, statistically secured. By playing the right music at the right place at the right time on brand, meaning that the guests would stay for a dessert, or they would buy more product because they felt better when they were in the actual restaurant. So music is played for a reason since almost the 1920s and 1930s, when they started using music in kind of commercial context. But the science is fairly sophisticated, where you can really see different types of effects on consumer behavior, but also on consumer perception. As an example, you can use certain types of music or BPMs, beats per minute, in order to for example, get people to perceive time differently. So if you're in line, you can kind of affect the perception of time, that it doesn't feel that you're staying in line too long and so forth. There's multiple use cases to use audio to drive consumer perception and behavior.
And could you please give us an example of such a research that was conducted to measure how the sales number can increase if you play the right music in a restaurant, bar, gym, or some other place?
I can go back to the one of many field experiments. Obviously, when we used the same example of this fast food chain, we were running sales data in parallel to different types of applications of the soundtrack of that brand. So comparing, for example, restaurants with no music, restaurants with music from just popular music, not on brand according to our method, and then restaurants applying our method, the soundtrack of that brand, meaning that we help them deliver exactly the right type of music for their brand that we have developed through our proprietary method, and then the right music at the right time, and the delta between actually playing no music and playing our music was 5%. The delta between playing the wrong music, just popular top 100 hits, was actually worse than playing no music. Mm-hmm. And then the delta between that was 9%. So this was applied through a statistical model called the Latin square method, where you basically, for data people, you could think about it as an ABC test in the real world environment.
Mm-hmm. And is this research published somewhere, or is it like internal?
Yes, we've done. It's published academically. This one, this specific one, you can find a lot of research on our webpage at soundtrack.app.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So I recommend to our listeners to check the website and see more details. And you already mentioned the word data. How important is data in your company?
It's it's absolutely critical. Like in all companies, I would say it's you can't run a company without data. The first kind of challenge as an entrepreneur when building a company is obviously creating the platform for high quality data, right? Because taking those investments early always pays off down the line, right? So I would say data is in everything we do, in every meeting, in every instance we operate. We use data as a starting point. Humans are great in conjunction to data. I see data as the what, and I see humans get involved in the how when we run a business.
And do you also implement some data-driven use cases that are shipped to the end consumers of your product?
Absolutely. In the most basic terms, the funny thing about data, and also when we move into machine learning and artificial intelligence, is actually the music industry, or specifically within music distribution, we've always had data and data-driven products as our core, right? So we've been using artificial intelligence or music intelligence from day one in order to enable a functioning product. When you're supplying 100 million tracks, music songs, it's impossible to provide a product without having a filtering function or some type of kind of recommendation engine driving it. So I think the music industry, and specifically the music service providers in the market, have been pioneers in using data and machine learning and AI in kind of the core product for more than 10 years now. So answering your question, I'm trained in this industry and I grew up in this industry, and hence this industry is actually very data driven.
I assume that you need to track every single song played by your customers so that, for instance, artists and right holders are properly remunerated?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a core. That's a requirement. I mean, building a music streaming service requires a huge investment in the actual infrastructure piece first, which is the music backend, if you may. People always tend to underestimate how complex it is in building a music distribution platform. But there's a reason why Spotify is still the global leader, is that they actually took all of those big investments early and they understood how complex it is on the consumer side. We update millions of metadata points every week in order to identify who owns the IP in our ongoing 100 million song database. Then when that song is consumed or used by a business somewhere in one of the 75 markets where we play, then we have to apply the reporting of that specific track to that specific publisher and that specific label who owns the rights for that track specifically in that market to their commercial contract with us, and then report and redistribute royalties collected according to commercial agreements. So it's a very sophisticated, complex underlying infrastructure motion that's constantly ongoing and when running a music streaming service, and it changes all the time. So without that investment initially, you cannot operate a digital service provider in this market.
Absolutely. So based on this data, you can of course do also music classification, music recommendation, any other insights and tips for your customers.
That's not that data. That's completely different data sets. So, and different use cases. So there's one data job to be done when it comes to just being able to source and distribute and remunerate based on, the complex world of music rights. That's a huge build in itself. Then on top of that, you need to build intelligence in order to provide a easy to use service to the end consumer. In my case, a business or a brand, and for Spotify, a consumer. And in order to do so, you need to add another layer of data, meaning kind of classification data. And classification data, music, meaning descriptions of what music is, genre, energy and things like that. The metadata sets that come from the industry are not harmonized, and I would almost call them useless. So what you need to do is you need to take the 100 million tracks and you need to have machines analyze them and classify them yourselves for the highest quality kind of classification, filtering, and then recommendation. So we have a whole proprietary music intelligence platform and machine learning platform that constantly analyzes our music catalog based on how brands think about music and then recommend based on that. So then you need to build a product on top of that kind of helps the brand find that music and play the right music.
And are there differences between music usage for businesses and individuals?
Oh, it's night and day. It's a completely different use case. For an individual, it's all about whatever you feel like listening today. It can be, you can listen one track hard rock and one track techno, and you can have hip hop with explicit lyrics, and you can play one track 100 times. When you're moving into a social commercial context, it's much more closer to actually broadcasting and packaging. Once again, a professional, well-calculated augmentation of the customer experience of the brand, which needs to be harmonized. It needs to meet the customer on where they are, if they're having lunch or having drinks after work. It's a completely different application. What we built is a very sophisticated content management system for brands on top of 100 million song catalog, so that they can kind of apply the business to business use case to music distribution.
Yeah, I imagine. So for instance, you cannot play the same Eurovision song over and over in restaurant, but individual users can do that very often.
Yeah, it's in your headphones, and when it's outside your headphones, all of a sudden you're exposed to a public domain. And depending on that public domain, brands take this very seriously. I mean, they invest. Imagine, Dior or Gucci, or like playing 3 Eurovision songs on too high volume and then a hip hop track in there. It just would never happen. It's extremely well thought through. So the brand interplays with everything in the retail experience over time to drive the desired behavior of the consumer and the desired experience of the brand.
Yes, thank you for this answer. And let's now switch a topic a little bit, because when I went through your recent posts on LinkedIn, you have been recently very vocal about your road to profitability and your capital efficiency. And can you briefly summarize where are you now?
Sure. We are still a very small company. We launched Soundtrack 2018, and we rolled out 75 markets during 18 and 19, and then obviously 2020, 21 were completely destroyed by the pandemic. Our customers are restaurants, cafes, hotels, bars, and retail, and obviously the whole world shut down for us for 2 years almost. Now we're back on track, and we've come out of the second half of 2021, and then into 2022. We have 18 months of very, very kind of normal operating background, and this path we've taken is really building an extremely scalable operation, a global leading B2B music distribution platform with less than 100 people. So given our ambition to build hyper effective organization empowered by software and artificial intelligence in its core, we want to build profitability just as important as growth. And I think we were before the market in seeing that. We think that profitability is really what you're investing in. Growth is important in combination with profitability, but growth without profitability is meaningless. So we've been very focused on combining profitability, capital efficiency, and growth in the right kind of mix between the three for almost since coming out of COVID. And I think we're starting to see where the balance lies in our business specifically, where we think we can grow at around 30 to 50% on an organic basis, on annual basis, but with operating at around a 10 to 20% EBITDA margin with high capital efficiency on all KPIs. I think that's really unique position that proves that you have a scalable growth business. It's easy to grow if you can spend unlimited amounts of money, right? And that's kind of where the market got lost the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And does data or AI help you in your efforts to become a profitable company?
Yes, in every aspect. I mean, it really is. If you have your for B2B SaaS, it's very specific what KPIs you track and kind of how you measure capital efficiency. And capital efficiency is about a couple of things, and those are completely data driven. You need to know what your customer value looks like. So you need to be able to predict and understand how much is a customer worth over time. So for us, maybe it's an entrepreneur that comes in with one restaurant, and all of a sudden, 2 years later, he has 10 restaurants on his account, right? So there's an incremental growth in the account that you don't see in the consumer industry. And then you have obviously pricing and retention to drive kind of the customer value. So you need to really, really, really understand the current and the future customer value development. That's core. And then you need to be equally data driven and apply equal requirements on precision in your sales and marketing investments, meaning what it costs to acquire those customers that are valued X. So being professionally correct around the estimates of your customer acquisition cost and your customer value is core for any type of business, consumer or B2B. And in order to be so, you need to be extremely disciplined around your data. Because otherwise it's just like, if you don't know what you're doing in this, then your company can be completely off.
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to use data and AI to understand how much it costs to actually bring a customer to your product. What is the customer lifetime value? And also, what is the effort to actually make sure that the customer is still using your product over the long period?
Yes, and it's simplified by customer acquisition cost, the cost of acquiring that customer, versus the lifetime value, the LTV. So the CAC LTV ratio, meaning the LTV to CAC needs to be bigger than 3, I would say, is a requirement. So you need to be doing 3x return on customers. That's kind of the magic number. You can overinvest during certain periods of time and compromise on that, but that's really what the market at least requires, both in consumer and B2B businesses. So that's core. And then there's a bunch of other metrics in B2B that we follow, like on a very rigorous level all the time, and talk about constantly in the management team, what can we do to improve? Because really, when you improve capital efficiency, you improve your business.
Yes, and given the fact that this year is very tough, because the cost of capital is much higher, there is rising inflation that increases costs basically of everything. Plus, there is economic slowdown or maybe even a recession in some countries. So given all this, do you plan to invest in data and AI solutions to achieve profitability this or next year?
We have been investing aggressively in data and artificial intelligence since day one, and we're already reaping the rewards. And I'm not saying that to just, tell you how great we are. It's really a part of how we build businesses in the music industry. We look to machines to help us with scale human behavior. We've done so for a long while, and that's really what machine learning and artificial intelligence is about, right? Replicating and scaling jobs that humans could do, but you do through data processing instead. So we've done so from the beginning, meaning that today we're able to operate a small team of 80 employees in a global markets. We're live in 75 markets, and we're operating at around $280,000 per employee per year, which is almost 3 times more than the average SaaS company. I'm not comparing myself to consumer services like Spotify, because they've been doing this since day one as well. So I think if you do the math for Spotify, it will be much better than us, because they are completely scalable through the platform, and we're applying the same thinking. I think we can operate a company, almost 2x the type of kind of ARR per FTE, which is the metric is called the annual recurring revenue per full-time employee. We can probably move that up to 500,000 to maybe even $1 million moving forward. Because I don't see any reason to grow with like human labor if you can grow through automation.
Yeah, it's really impressive how much you have achieved with a team of 80 employees. Where often startups, even if they are not profitable, they grow in terms of employees very fast, and very often you can notice that they hire 500 or 1,000 people.
And they brag about it and say that we grew last year with 80%. And I ask, in what? And they say in team. And I was like, why? I mean, really, I don't know where this has come from, or where we got stuck. If it's the HR people that have taken, some type of pride in growing with team and got the management team, it doesn't make any sense at all. And in a world where we have software, because software is built to automate human behavior and augment human productivity. So I just don't understand. I've never understood it. I will never understand it. And I think the time has kind of caught up to the growth per FTE as some type of indicator of success. It's revenue per FTE that's really the success driver, and the productivity and capital efficiency, and then obviously combined with growth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. What do you think about generative AI, about using that in your product or maybe in the music industry, especially B2B, because this is where you are?
I think it's a very natural progression. It's nothing, it's nothing strange at all. We've almost been using it for a long while through generating actual playlists. You could almost call that generative AI, because we're matching this track with this track to meet a certain type of kind of filtering requirement and harmonization of a playlist over time, a creation, if you may, of a creative produce. So we've been doing it for a long while. We've been using it in our marketing functions and blog productions and stuff like that for a while, and it's nothing rocket science about that. It's an amazing evolution for sure that can be used in different types of kind of business use cases. In the music industry, there's this huge rumble now around actual music production by machines, which is, I would say, just the natural development of kind of what we've seen for a long while. Music producers have been using artificial intelligence to help them produce things for a long while now, and this is just taking the step to actually letting a machine produce the whole track. I don't think it's gonna substitute the music creators of the world and the beautiful art that's being produced. I mean, it's already, I don't know the latest number, but there's 100 million tracks, 100,000 tracks being published every day or something like that. And it's just growing because anyone can produce music, and the level of quality can be high and low. And now you're also adding machines to the whole thing, but still there's still a human who needs to press the button to kind of produce it, and it's just a question of level of human interaction in the actual production. So I think it's an interesting new debate that's showing up, but I don't think it's going to have a significant impact on kind of the streaming markets and the consumption of music moving forward.
And for instance, in your opinion, is it possible that AI might be responsible for different frauds or plagiarism in the music industry? So, for instance, imagine that someone uses AI and the voice of Ed Sheeran and creates a song that gets viral. And could it be any consequences of that?
I think it's very problematic if it's IP infringement. Mm-hmm. And we have regulatory frameworks for IP infringement that also apply to if it's a human or if it's a machine who's actually fraudulent. So there's no difference. Like, we're machines, they're machines. They can scale faster, but it's still, it's just the volume that increases, of course. But we can control that. We can use machines to control the volume as well. Like, we can meet mm-hmm. machines with machines. So no, you cannot steal IP or creative assets and just like you can't do it mm-hmm. As a bootleg when producing music back in the days. It will be challenging for sure. I mean, there's about a couple of examples with that Drake track and Weekend track that was out and that was produced, but that's more like hype. I think mm-hmm. people are going to hear a couple of those tracks like 3-4 times and it's going to spread like crazy. And it's like, oh, look, it's so cool. But then at the end of the day, my kids are still going to go back to kind of listening to, really, really good creative arts that are produced by humans. In the long term.
So it still means that there will be needed some tools actually to detect if a given song was created by humans or AI, or whether it's a fraud. or some stolen AP in a given song?
Those technologies already exist. It's not about seeing if it's a machine or not. That could probably, I'm not up to speed on actually the identification of those kind of patterns, but for sure they could do that. But they're already kind of looking for bootlegs, and they're already looking for, as an example, covers that are not covers. I mean, the DSPs have been doing this for a long while now, trying to find, fraudulent content on their platforms, trying to steal royalties from the actual artist. It's not just a machine problem, it's a general kind of music distribution challenge.
Yeah, that's true. Can you share any information about interesting future trends in your industry? How the music B2B industry may look like in 3, 4, maybe 5 years?
Yeah, I think my idea with this has never been to digitize the background music market only. I think that's only the beginning. First, you need to build a really good product that helps the actual user, the restaurant owner, to do something faster, more efficiently, and better than previously. And that's the first instance. That's where we are right now. So right now for us, it's distribution and penetration of the market. But the interesting thing about this, I believe, is what I saw is that the B2B market is incremental, meaning it's an additional opportunity on top of the consumer market for the music industry. And it's an incremental opportunity based on two things. One is it's a new way of extracting royalties for artists, for music creators in businesses. It's completely dysfunctional today. Nobody knows what's being used to play, and nobody knows where the money is going. I'm fixing that, and I'm actually charging more than $30 on average per subscription, which is 6 times more than the consumer markets, which are at $5 on a global average revenue per subscription. So we are adding value to the cake. We are increasing the size of the cake of music royalties. That's good news. It might not be close to how big the consumer market is, but it could be meaningful. It could be another 10, 20% that nobody knew was there. And then secondarily, we're also creating an incremental additional opportunity in terms of marketing music, because in our customer stores, whatever it is, a cafe, restaurant, or a retailer, or a gym, or any, there's on average around 400 people who walk in and out every day. There's a music discovery opportunity in the real world as well, outside your headphones. I mean, how many times haven't you found a great track when you're in a bar with friends, or at a club, or actually in a juice bar, or a cafe? So we are also increasing the marketing platform for music into the physical world, and adding the real-time data trackability to that. So if you combine those two, kind of marketing and value, there's a huge opportunity of growing this. There's around 100 million commercial doors in the total addressable market for B2B. That's roughly a $40 billion opportunity. So we could create an additional revenue stream for the music industry. We can create an additional marketing platform for the music industry. We can combine those two in a way where, if we build a really, really good product, we can help those businesses sell more juice, sell more coffee, sell more whatever they're selling with this great music and software platform, which means that we can extract even more value over time. And then you can start engaging with consumers as well out there. For example, choosing tracks in a restaurant, voting for tracks, interacting with the music in different ways. That creates this interplay between the brand, the consumer, and the music industry, which is what everyone is looking for in different types of creative use cases. So, but in order to do so, you first have to distribute the real-time platform out into the physical world. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm basically providing, nodes out there that we then can kind of come up with creative ways of working with.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you say is very interesting, because given the fact that a lot of people work remotely, spend a lot of time in front of the screen than staying a bit longer in a restaurant and talking to someone. Eating a cake is really good, I think, for humans. And you also mentioned that you increased the revenue for the music industry. And I have one question, because when you listen to artists, sometimes they complain about the money that they get from Spotify, especially the less known artists, because the most popular artists, I think that they get quite large revenue thanks to Spotify. Also record labels, they benefit, but local artists who are not that well known in the music industry, I think that they get very low revenue from music streaming app. And does it happen that in B2B industry, some artists are extremely popular in B2B sector and not that much popular in the consumer market, so that they greatly benefit from the service that you are providing to B2B music industry?
I mean, I think first of all, everyone, and this is kind of like a broken record, but everyone needs to understand that what's happened the last 10 years is the music market was almost dead, like through file sharing. Spotify, I would almost give them like almost the whole kind of benefit of actually saving the music industry. They created an opportunity to actually start monetizing with a better product in Brooklyn. So they've turned that negative trend around. They also added full transparency to the market, which means that you can't hide anymore. It's about what, if people listen to your music, you're going to be compensated according to the model. So, but what also happened was that the whole industry was digitizing in terms of production, distribution, and consumption, right? So all of a sudden, the number of artists or music creators publishing and distributing music has exponentially increased. So even though the total cake was almost disappearing, and then Spotify turned it around, and now it's just 10 years in consecutive growth, and it's never been more healthy in terms of revenue generated. Music industry is bigger than ever today, for the record. It's just more people have to share. Previously, those people weren't able to distribute their music. They couldn't publish because you needed to go through a record label, get a deal, and print CDs or whatnot. Yeah. Now anyone can do it. You and I can release a track today and distribute it. So everyone has to understand that it's not a right to survive being musical. You have to earn it, like in any other profession. You need to earn it by actually generating fans that listen to your music. And the distribution and the collection of royalties and redistribution royalties are completely transparent and fair. So yes, of course, Beyonce is going to be making more money than I am because I'm a crappy producer. And because she's got more fans and more people listening to, and it's fairly distributed based on what's being listened to. So I think it's a very uneducated dialogue when around complaining not getting reimbursed, because the music industry is X. Y% of X is being redistributed to music creators. That's completely transparent. Like Spotify, Apple, everyone is completely, and it's rich as well. It's 70% that they're redistributing. And then who's being played, whose music is being played within that 72% or whatever it is that's being redistributed, is being redistributed according to what's being consumed. Yeah. So it's completely fair and transparent.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of creators and sharing that pie.
I actually had been working at Spotify in the past, so I understand this transparency, the revenue sharing model. So I totally agree with you. Maybe my question would be should be asked differently. If you compare top 100 artists on Spotify, how much it differs from top 100 artists at Soundtrack Your Brand, and whether those differences are very large or still you will see many similar artists in the top.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different question. The beauty is that B2B is different than B2C completely.
Yes.
Once again, the use case is you're very, very proactively choosing a long-term experience, right? So for the brand, and you're programming the music with high detail and with a specific objective of delivering a brand experience. So that means that the catalog consumption looks completely different. Very interesting. I could go on for this for a long time, but trying to oversimplify. Frontline hits catalog, like Eurovision or whatnot, it doesn't, boom in our system. It's a much more kind of long tail, well thought through soundscape that's delivered over time. So jazz, for example, has a much bigger position in our world, or lounge music has a much bigger market share than in kind of consumer consumption patterns, which anyone can figure out if you just think about it.
Yes.
So a very, very different use case and a very different catalog consumption.
So this is also interesting, and this makes,
which also provides another opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Which provides opportunity for catalogs within those genres, within those sounds.
Absolutely. I have the last final question. You have already answered partially or maybe fully to that question, but maybe it would be nice to repeat that or add some additional information. So what are the key metrics or maybe key dashboards or maybe key AI models that you look at every day or every week as a CEO?
Every day I look at obviously growth and intake. So when I wake up in the morning, I always get my sales report from yesterday automatically, and I look at what new customers have come in what markets and what they look like, and how we've expanded existing customers that we've lost and why, and so forth. It's the daily cadence of looking at your customer flows and the revenue implications of that. That's like basic stuff every day, and asking questions around. And then on a weekly, monthly reporting basis, it's what we spoke about earlier. It's okay, how are we growing? At what efficiency rates are we growing? And how are we improving our profitability through that growth? So I have one tool that I use to look at kind of just performance, which is our BI tool, which I have obviously my own my own dashboard that I follow all the time and analyze myself. And then we have financial reporting and financial numbers that are always just closing the books at the end of the month, where we sit down, the whole management team, and work through the month in terms of, okay, what did we perform? What worked according to forecast? What didn't work according to what were the underlying drivers of our business performance, which is usually kind of usage-based KPIs like free trials, free to paying conversions, expansion, pricing, and things like that. So it's really no rocket science. It's just being very, very, data focused and combining financial data with management accounting data with usage-based data, right? So not getting stuck in either financial data only. You have to connect the three layers of data, because it all starts with the usage pattern from a user, and that usage pattern goes through different types of financial implications, and then those financial implications lead to closing books for the month, right? And having those three kind of interconnect and understand how they affect each other.
Yes, thank you. So this was my final question. Ola, I would like to thank you very much for this conversation and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to contribute. Hope it helped someone to see something new.
If you are interested in getting notifications about future podcast episodes, please subscribe to Radio Data Podcast on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. If you are interested in being an expert guest in one of our episodes, please find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. My name is Adam Kawa and I work at Getting Data, which is a data consultancy company. If you would like to learn more about our data, analytics, AI, ML, and cloud projects and our services, please visit us at gettingdata.com.